butterfly just fluttering up. I think he's going for the light reflecting off your head, Paul.
Wasn't necessary.
I know. Welcome to another episode of Follow the Project. We're still midway through this project. Why am I using a pressure washer? Well, the reason I'm using a pressure washer is one to clean up the brand new deck that Paul has walked muddy footprints on.
Sorry.
But now I wanted to show you the composite deck. Now, we looked at this previously with the subframe in position, so those 400mm centers. If you want to find out any more about how to build a deck in subframe, check out the earlier video. But you can see there are no screw holes in this because we use a secret fixing, so it gives a really clean aesthetic. Now, the composite decking is a combination of recycled wood fibers and recycled plastic. So before everyone starts thinking, you're putting plastic into a garden, this has come from a recycled source. So it's quite nice to know that we are then reusing and reutilizing previous plastics to create this fantastic surface area. And it is a fantastic surface area, plenty of room around here for additional seating, fire pit, or just somewhere to recline and enjoy the sun, which might break out midway through this video. In the first few weeks of September, the weather throws us a swerve ball and we get a bit of sunshine, so the client will have some time to enjoy those vistas down on the completed garden come the final throes of summer. Now, because we're in an elevated position, because the clients might want to have the occasional G&T, we need to make sure that they're not going to fall down into the lower garden. So we've got a contemporary looking balustrade as well as these aviation wire fixings, which create a nice detail but also have a practical and safe purpose as well. So if they do stumble against the edge, they know they're not going to stumble all the way down to the bottom end of the garden. We'll make our way down to the garden, but no, we won't. We'll go up here first because this has been my favourite part of the project, to be honest. A lot of the briefs we get from our clients is that they want to live out here, dine out here, and that's where this part of the garden really will come into its own, because this is going to become a raised vegetable patch. And it was originally the roof of an old bunker which was built in the 1930s, and essentially it was just a dumping ground. Now we've got space to grow veg. We're going to flood this with salads and brassicas. We can have veg, we can have fruit spilling over. We've got a mixture of sage, oregano, we've got some rosemary. Now at the moment it's slim pickings, so as long as you like sage and rosemary, you're fine, but then we can flood this area with a whole myriad of different herbs and spices. We've got enough sunshine in this garden so we can grow things like our chilies. We can chuck a couple of courgette plants in, and you know when it comes to courgette, when you cook those at home, cut them nice and thin into a hot pan full of oil. Up of this trellis here as a backdrop, this is creating a nice contemporary aesthetic, a nice dark aesthetic as well. Ironically, this has actually made the garden feel longer and wider despite it being that kind of black tone, but you also accentuate the greens and any flowers that come in front of it. So things like the beans can be grown up in there. We could got enough depth here actually if we wanted to create a whole bed of sweet peas. The sweet peas really like deep root systems, so if you've got enough depth to plant sweet peas, it's such an easy plant to plant and grow as long as they've got the depth of the roots. They'll throw out flowers and scent as well, so we could have a bit of cutting flower going on here as well. I don't want to spend too much time up here because it's very simple and very bare at the moment, so let's go down to the bottom part of the garden. And this is almost like a garden within a garden here, because we've got flanking the steps either side here, we've got these retained areas of planting. Now, we've mentioned throughout the whole course of the summer so far the importance of pollinators. Here's a prime example. I've got a little bit of an obsession at the moment when it comes to lavender, and until I started watering everything, this whole area here was just a buzz with activity. We've got a selection of different pollinators going on in here, so we've obviously got our lavender head coat, which is English lavender. God save our Brit. We've got a little bit of French lavender at the front, just to keep our European counterparts happy. We've also got things like salvia, which flowers right to the end of the summer and puts these lovely scented prongs out in here. It's a really sweet smell as well, almost like that kind of waft that you get when you walk into a sweet shop. It's just that lovely, really rich sweetness, really fills the nostrils. That accompanied by the scent of lavender, which is slightly more subtle, makes a really beautiful aesthetic, but also that smell. And this is going to create an acoustic element as well, because in the midst of summer, can you imagine this whole bank just filled with that buzz of bees? Then we've also got some last flowers coming up here from the summer. So we've got some dahlias going in, so they'll flower all the way through to the bitter end of summer. Another great plant for that is anemone as well, because they'll throw out flowers right to the end, and then that'll keep that colour, and also not only the colour but also the pollinators active right the way through until that transition into autumn. Now, when it comes to ease of maintenance, and one of my favorite things, not only to mow, but to plant, it's grass. And you're gonna think, well, grass. Well, there is grass for your lawn, but there's also ornamental grass as well. Specifically, if you've got awkward beds, if you've got semi-shady areas, if you've got dry soil, or if you just don't want to mow and maintain or look after anything, if you just want to be able to look out and enjoy without having to do any hard work, then grasses are some of the best plants to plant. Now, in order to keep this nice and clean and stop the weeds from making their way amongst the grasses, what we've done is we've put a weed membrane down below, and then we've used some decorative aggregate in order to cover that. Now, that does not limit you from planting. Don't think just because that's down there, we haven't got scope to add to this if we wanted to. All you need to do is get a sharp knife, slice through, create a pocket. Now, I would always cut it in a cross section, fold back those corners, remove the soil, and plant in and amongst that. Cover over and make sure you try and get that aggregate around the underside of that plant, suppress the weeds, but allow all your plants plenty of space to grow. Quick finish on this, we've got something called zebra grass or Miscanthus sienensis gold bar. It really does live up to its name. It has these wonderful gold stripes running through it. You've got to be careful when you touch this plant because on the outside edges of this grass, tiny little serrations. If you run your hand up this way, you'll pass over the grass without any issue whatsoever. If you run your finger down this at pace, it's actually got, those barbs are sharp enough to slice your finger open, believe it or not. So beautiful to look at, beautiful to handle. Just make sure you handle this one with care. Come and have a look at this, Paul.
It's a wall.
It's a black wall.
Amazing. Good job.
Thanks. Got slightly carried away with the black on this job. We've got black edgings, we've got black fencing, but it mutes those scruffier backdrops. Now, this was an exposed brick. It was a bit tumble down brick. It was weathered. And you can tell me, chat in the comments down below if you think this is a great way to accentuate the greens. But look, have a look at that star jasmine here. Look at the little white flowers coming up here against that back black drop. Look at the pinks of the echinacea. The Clematis armandii, when that fills this with some greens, that green's really gonna pop and also gonna accentuate those white flowers as well. Maybe you want to create an evergreen raised screen, really useful way to do it, into what was our old bunker, or at least it would be, but the clients put a padlock on the door. There's lights in there, you just have to trust me. Well, we do have some ornamental grasses, and then we have less than ornamental grasses, because this was the lawn. We found some old, believe it or not, they had stepping stones in here. And have a look at this, because this is what happens if you don't look after your lawn. Paul, come and feel this and tell me what that feels like. This is the underside.
Feels like
a doormat.
Yeah.
Yeah? Now, admittedly, there are some grass in there, in that root system, but most of that is primarily made up of the moss root system. All it needs in order to stay and get happy and thrive is an occasional deposit of moisture, and it's gonna latch onto any of the minerals that come from the rainwater as well, and it's gonna get itself very, very happy, and that's enough to sustain whole banks of moss. And that's why it's so important to get rid of that. And incidentally, it's scarifying season coming up soon. So we'll show you a whole series on what to do in autumn, but for the interim, let's have a look at the state of this lawn. Now you can see we've already started to rotivate some of the area over there. We're also going to supplement the soil with new soil as well. We're going to use what's called root zone soil locally, and that is a composition of around about 60 to 40 or 80 to 20% of soil and sand. It's going to be free draining, but enough nutrients in there to sustain that new root system. There's one thing I did forget to mention, that is you've got to remove the existing lawn before you start rotivating. If you do just want to go wholesale in with the rotivating, be prepared to remove all of the old sods and get rid of those on site, because you don't want that moss coming back, you don't want those big clumps of dead sod decaying underneath the root system, because that is not a happy environment for that juvenile root system of your lawn turf. And then it's a case of assessing the existing soil. In this case, that's perfect for what we want. We're going to remove all these old root systems, and the only way to do that is by meticulous raking, I'm afraid. And we're going to leave that lovely, fertile, free-draining loam down below. Now, when it comes to the beds and borders, we're going to create a whole hive of interest with bulbs. Now, bulb planting is one of the easiest things you can do in your garden. We'll dedicate a whole video to it. despite how easy it is to do, because there are a few kind of key rules that you need to understand and also to make sure that you follow when you're planting the bulbs. But we're going to throw a whole host of different colors, shapes, times of flower in here. We're going to have Hyacinthoides non-scripta. What's that, Paul?
Oh yeah, bluebells.
Bluebells. There we go. We're gonna have some bluebells, we're gonna have some crocus, we're gonna have some snowdrops, we'll also have some tulips, we'll have some alliums, whole host of different heights, colors, textures, all going on in these beds and borders to create a nice impact both for the eyes. And again, we're gonna get that acoustic element because it'll become a hive of activity with those winged creatures that need a little pollen stop. Now, before we do plant our bulbs, we want to make sure we create a fertile environment, just like we do with the lawn, just like we do with any bed and border. It's what you don't see, which is the most important part that plant success. So we want to aerate and enrich this soil because it is expired, it's tough, so it's compacted and consolidated. So we need to break that up. It's easier for us to maintain as gardeners, and it's also better for when we start planting in the bulb, which is the nucleus of that new growth. We've got that oxygen in to that subsoil. We can then enrich it further by using either the ericaceous compost or a multi-purpose compost to create a really fertile environment. And that means everything this time next year will be thriving, not just surviving. It's also much easier than digging. Not quite ripe yet, they're almost there. Sharp. I just bagged this video up, man eats apple on YouTube as the header.
This is good content.
Leave comments down below. He ate that apple all wrong. This is the bottom end of the garden. This is where the garden's going to go back to nature. We've got some existing fruit trees here, so we've got some damsons, some plums, and we've got a couple of apples as well. But what we didn't have before was a pond. We had what was a pond. And when we lifted the old liner up, we found out just how big that pond would have been originally. So we've implemented it back into the garden. So it's not just the frogs and the creatures that live in and amongst the water. So the water snails, the skates, they then bring in other predators as well. So you'll have things like damselflies, you'll have dragonflies hovering around, you'll have all that movement, that noise, the occasional buzzing. And if there's a veritable orgy of activity in the pond, all of a sudden the birds will twig onto that and they'll start coming down. And birds will also use the water, the shallower water, in order to wash themselves. And then we'll have the aesthetic of all of that water-based planting going on as well. So we'll have some water garlic, we'll have some colour from the irises, lobelia as well, We'll have something else in there as well, which begins with L. Can you guess what it is? So we'll have Lobelia Queen Victoria going in there, which is a really kind of crimson red flower at the top of a spire of burgundy leaves. Again, slugs like it, so if you get it closer to the water's edge, it'll impede their movement over there, unless you've got a holier-than-thou slug that can walk across water. So the bottom of the garden we've populated with crocosmium, we've got some buddleia, we're going to have some ferns in there because we're in a slightly shadier patch. So all of that's going to create new foliage for existing wildlife to hide in and amongst and feed from. But underneath that, we've also got banks of wild garlic as well. So in the spring months, that's going to shoot up, and in the early summer, it's going to completely cover that with leafy textural growth, but also a really strong scent as well. So this is where the garden goes back to nature, and that's where we're going to end this week's video. If you've got any questions about what it is we do, how we've been doing it, if you want to find out any more about creating spaces in your garden, feel free to send us a message down in the comment section below. And don't forget, if you're looking for top tools to help you on tasks in your outdoor space, you can always check the link out at the end of the video. Thanks for watching.